He came to MMA at 32 years old. No wrestling background, no jiu-jitsu pedigree, just hands that could shut off the lights from any angle. 2 years later, he was UFC middleweight champion. 1 year after that, he held the light heavyweight belt. Alex Pereira did something that shouldn't be possible. He became a 2-division UFC champion while barely being able to grapple. His training approach broke every rule about what MMA fighters need to succeed. And it worked anyway. This is how Alex Pereira really trained. Welcome to Loving Fighters. Pereira grew up in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Poor neighborhood, tough environment. He started working at 12 years old to help his family. Tire shops, factories, manual labor jobs that built physical toughness before he ever stepped into a gym. He played soccer like most Brazilian kids, but wasn't going anywhere with it. At around 21, he walked into a kickboxing gym and everything changed. The gym was connected to the shoot box system. Shoot box was legendary in Brazilian combat sports. They'd produced Wanderlei Silva, Shogun Rua, Anderson Silva trained there early in his career. The style was aggressive, walk forward, throw heavy, overwhelm opponents with violence. Technical precision mattered less than breaking the other guy's will. Pereira absorbed this mentality completely. That left hand. Pereira's physical gifts were obvious from the start. 6'4" with long arms, big frame that could carry muscle without losing speed. But the power was the thing. Some fighters develop knockout power through technique. Pereira had it naturally. His bones were dense. His leverage was perfect for generating force. When he learned to rotate his hips correctly, the power became scary. The kickboxing career came first. Glory was the premier kickboxing organization at the time. Pereira worked his way up through regional Brazilian promotions, building a record against increasingly dangerous opponents. The knockouts kept coming. First round, second round. Left hooks landing on chins and ending nights early. Glory signed him and he climbed through their rankings. Won the middleweight championship in 2017 by knocking out Yusri Belgarui. Defended it twice with more knockouts. He moved up to light heavyweight and won that belt too. 2-division champion in kickboxing before he ever thought about MMA. The Israel-Adesanya rivalry defined his kickboxing career. They fought twice in Glory. Adesanya won the first fight by decision in 2016. Close, competitive fight. The rematch in 2017 went differently. Pereira landed the left hook in the third round, and Adesanya went unconscious. Complete shutdown. That knockout would follow both of them into the UFC years later. The training in kickboxing was straightforward. Heavy emphasis on sparring. Brazilians from that era believed in hard work in the gym. Pereira would spar rounds constantly, developing timing through repetition and accumulating experience through combat. Pad work focused on power shots, the left hook, the overhand left, body kicks. The style was about finding one clean shot that ended things, not about winning rounds on points. They drilled combinations, but always with finishing in mind. Jab to set up the left, right hand to draw a reaction, then the left hook counter, low kick to the lead leg to limit mobility, then the left hand when opponents couldn't move. Everything funneled toward that left hand landing clean. The power came from technique refinements over years. Hip rotation that started from the floor. Weight transfer that put everything behind the punch. Timing that let the opponent's momentum add to the impact. Pereira wasn't just strong. He understood how to use his strength at the exact right moment. Conditioning in kickboxing was sport-specific. 3-round fights, sometimes 5 rounds for championships. The work was intense but shorter duration than MMA would require. Running, bag work, sparring, nothing revolutionary. Just consistent work over years that built a championship-level kickboxer. The transition to MMA came in 2020. Pereira was already 32 years old, ancient for someone starting a new combat sport. Most UFC champions had been wrestling since childhood. They'd spent 15 or 20 years developing grappling skills. Pereira had essentially none. Critics said he was too old to develop the skills he lacked, said wrestlers would take him down and submit him easily. His sprawl would be slow. His hip defense would be amateur level. Good grapplers would drag him to the mat and finish him before his power mattered. He signed with a small Brazilian promotion first, Low Kick MMA. Won his first 2 fights by knockout in the first round. Opponents couldn't handle the power even though his grappling was basic. The UFC signed him in 2021. The gamble was that his striking was so dangerous it might compensate for everything he lacked on the ground. The training had to change for MMA, but not as much as people expected. Pereira moved to the United States and started training with Glover Teixeira in Danbury, Connecticut. Teixeira was a former UFC light heavyweight champion. Elite jiu-jitsu. Veteran experience. He understood what Pereira needed and what he didn't need. Teixeira looked at him and saw a 33-year-old knockout artist with 15 years of striking experience. He saw someone who would never become a wrestler. That ship had sailed. Instead, they focused on making him hard to take down and dangerous to hold down if opponents got him there. The goal wasn't becoming a grappler. The goal was neutralizing grappling enough that the striking could work. Takedown defense became priority one. Sprawling when opponents shot, getting underhooks in the clinch before they could. Hip position that made it hard for wrestlers to get underneath him. Cage work to prevent being pressed against the fence and dragged down. They drilled these specific scenarios constantly, over and over, until the reactions became automatic. Pereira didn't need to shoot takedowns. He needed to stop them. Teixeira brought in training partners who could wrestle. Pereira needed to feel pressure from real wrestlers, not just drill techniques in isolation. They'd shoot on him, clinch him against the cage, take him down and try to hold him there. He got better through repetition and problem solving. Not elite, but good enough to survive and get back to his feet. On the ground, the focus was standing back up, wall walks using the cage, technical stand-ups when he had space, creating distance and getting to his feet as quickly as possible. If opponents took him down, the goal was surviving the initial attack and returning to standing where Pereira was lethal. Submission defense came second, protecting the neck, defending arm bars, not getting caught in anything fight-ending while working back to his feet. The striking training remained the foundation. Teixeira understood that Pereira's path to victory would always be through his hands. Making opponents respect the takedown threat was secondary to making them fear standing with him. So striking stayed the priority. Hours on the pads. Sparring rounds focused on MMA scenarios, the weapons that made him a kickboxing champion getting refined for a new sport. They adjusted his MMA striking for the differences from pure kickboxing, added shorter punches for the clinch where space was limited, elbows that worked in tight spaces, knees in the clinch, striking off the cage break when opponents tried to control him there. The pure kickboxing expanded into mixed martial arts striking that worked around grappling exchanges. The left hook got even more dangerous in MMA. In kickboxing, opponents knew to fear it. That was the whole game. In MMA, wrestlers focused so hard on setting up takedowns that they forgot about the power waiting for them. Pereira caught people coming in for shots. He caught people exiting the clinch. He caught people during exchanges when they thought they were safe. The weapon that made him a kickboxing champion became even more effective in a sport where people had more variables to worry about. Sparring remained central, but adjusted for MMA. Mixed rounds where partners could wrestle and strike, situations that simulated what would happen in actual fights. Pereira needed to learn how to strike while worrying about takedowns, how to maintain distance when opponents wanted to close and clinch, how to recognize when a wrestling exchange was coming and either stuff it or land something on the way in. The conditioning had to expand for 5-round title fights. Kickboxing rarely went longer than 3 rounds for him. MMA championship fights went 25 minutes. That's a different energy system requirement. They added more aerobic base work, longer sparring sessions, extended drilling that pushed his cardio beyond what kickboxing had demanded. But Pereira had an advantage most fighters don't. He finished fights early. His power meant he rarely needed championship cardio. In his UFC career, most fights ended in the first or second round. He was training for 5 rounds, but rarely using them. The conditioning was there as insurance. The power made sure he didn't need it. The weight management was cleaner than most fighters. Pereira fought at middleweight first, cutting to 185 from around 210 to 215. It was a significant cut, but manageable with his frame. When he moved to light heavyweight at 205, the cuts became easier. He looked more natural at the higher weight, still carrying power, still moving well, but not draining himself before fights the way he had at middleweight. The mental approach was unusual for a fighter with his power. Pereira stayed calm, eerily calm. Most knockout artists fight with aggression and emotion. Pereira fought like he was doing a job, clinical, patient. He'd wait for openings instead of forcing them. Trust that his power would create opportunities if he stayed composed. This came from the kickboxing background. He'd already been a champion, already knocked out dangerous opponents, already performed on big stages. The UFC was new, but the pressure wasn't. He'd dealt with expectations before. The mental game was already developed from years of high-level competition. Teixeira added tactical sophistication to the natural weapons. They'd study opponents together, find patterns, identify moments when opponents were vulnerable, then drill specific attacks for those specific moments. The left hook was always there, but the setups became customized for each fight. Before the first Adesanya fight in the UFC, they knew Izzy liked to pull his head straight back to avoid punches. That meant a short left hook could catch him during the pullback. They drilled it endlessly. When the fight happened, Pereira dropped Adesanya with exactly that punch in the first round. Adesanya survived and came back, won some rounds in the middle of the fight. It looked like experience might overcome power. Then the fifth round happened. Pereira stayed patient, found the opening, landed the left hand, and put Adesanya away for good. New middleweight champion. The immediate rematch went worse for Adesanya. Pereira knocked him out in the second round. The mental edge from those kickboxing fights carried over. Adesanya knew what Pereira's power felt like. That knowledge affected how he fought. Before the Jamahal Hill fight for the light heavyweight title, they identified that Hill circled into the power hand, left hook territory. Pereira stayed patient, let Hill work, then landed the left hook in the first round for the knockout. New division, new title, same weapon. The results at light heavyweight were ridiculous. He knocked out Hill for the title, defended against Jiri Prochazka with a head kick knockout in the second round. The rematch with Prochazka was dramatic. Pereira was getting beaten. Then he landed a shot in the second round and it was over. Again, defended against Khalil Roundtree with another knockout. 4 consecutive title fight knockouts. All finishes, none going to decision. The training with Teixeira had created a fighter who could survive long enough to land his shots. That was all he needed. So what made Pereira's training approach work when it shouldn't have? First, the power was genuinely exceptional. Not just heavy hands, fight-ending power that made opponents change how they fought. Wrestlers who should have shot takedowns stayed at range because they feared the counter. Strikers who should have exchanged became tentative because one mistake meant unconsciousness. That power created margin for error that other fighters don't have. He could make mistakes in other areas because the power punished opponents for trying to capitalize. Second, the late start meant no bad habits to unlearn. Most MMA fighters spend years learning to blend wrestling and striking. They develop patterns and compromises. Their boxing gets worse to accommodate grappling concerns. Pereira came in with pure striking and added just enough grappling defense to survive. His striking stayed clean because he didn't learn MMA striking compromises early. He throws punches like a kickboxer because that's what he is. Third, the coaching relationship worked perfectly. Teixeira understood exactly what Pereira needed. Not a complete MMA game, just enough grappling to stay standing. Teixeira didn't waste time trying to make Pereira a wrestler. He didn't try to develop a ground game that would never be elite. He built a game plan around the strengths that already existed and patched the obvious holes. Smart coaching that maximized what was there instead of chasing what could never be developed. Fourth, the weight class changes helped. At middleweight, Pereira was big for the division but fighting fast. Technical opponents like Adesanya. At light heavyweight, he was a natural fit facing opponents who wanted to stand and trade more often. The division suited his style better. Fewer pure wrestlers at the top, more guys willing to bang. Fifth, the experience from kickboxing transferred better than critics expected. Reading opponents, timing, distance management, composure under pressure, finishing instincts. All of it came from years of high-level kickboxing competition. He wasn't learning to be a striker in his 30s. He was adapting elite striking to a new context. That's a much easier task. The limitations are real, though. Pereira has been taken down and controlled when opponents committed to wrestling. Islam Makhachev-style pressure would cause problems. Elite grapplers who don't respect the power and shoot anyway would test him differently than the opponents he's faced. His ground game remains basic despite years of training. But the UFC light heavyweight division doesn't have that type of wrestler at the top right now. The matchups have favored Pereira's style. Opponents who want to strike. Opponents who respect the power too much. Opponents who play his game instead of forcing him to play theirs. The training philosophy challenges MMA conventional wisdom. The sport teaches that you need to be complete. Wrestling, striking, submissions all develop together. Pereira proves that exceptional strength in one area can compensate for weaknesses in others. If you're dangerous enough standing, opponents have to deal with that first. This doesn't mean every striker should ignore grappling. Pereira's power is unusual. His timing is elite. His experience at the highest level of kickboxing gave him skills most striking-focused MMA fighters don't have. The approach worked for him specifically because of who he is. Elements of his training could apply more broadly. The focus on takedown defense rather than trying to become an offensive wrestler. The emphasis on returning to feet quickly rather than developing a complex ground game. The patience to let power create openings rather than forcing exchanges. These ideas could help other striking-dominant fighters maximize their strengths. Glover Teixeira deserves credit for the development. He saw what Pereira was and built around it. He didn't try to make a 33-year-old into a wrestler. He made Pereira's striking work in MMA by adding exactly what was needed and nothing more. That coaching intelligence made the transition possible. The Kickboxing Foundation made everything else work. 15 years of professional striking competition, 2 divisional championships, hundreds of rounds against elite opponents. That base couldn't be replicated in a few years of MMA training. Pereira brought it with him fully formed. The MMA skills added on top were supplements, not the main course. The training wasn't complex. Striking refinement, grappling defense, takedown prevention, standing back up, cardio for longer fights, film study for opponent-specific preparation. Nothing revolutionary in the methods. The results came from applying solid training to exceptional raw material. Alex Pereira trained to do one thing better than anyone else in his division: hit people so hard they stopped fighting. Everything else in his preparation supported that goal. Get the fight to standing, keep it standing, find the opening, land the left hand, fight over. It shouldn't work in modern MMA. The sport is too evolved. The athletes are too complete. The grapplers are too good. But Pereira is 2-division champion with a record of knockouts that suggests otherwise. His training approach proved that the old ways still work when the power is real enough. Let me know in the comments what you think about Pereira's training. Thank you for watching Loving Fighters.